This Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. We're going to cover two big issues this week. Number one, the District 9 race for Congress. As you know, Congress in the balance right now. Does it tip Democrat, Republican? We're going to talk to one of the candidates. The other chose not to be here. We'll get into that in a minute. In the second part of the program, we're going to talk about Arizona Proposition 126 that would prohibit new or increased taxes on services. You've heard about this. We're going to debate it with the pro and con side, but we begin with District 9. Steve Ferrara is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. He is a Republican candidate for CD9. Greg Stanton, the former mayor of Phoenix, after repeated attempts to try to get him to appear on the program, he declined. I personally called him on his cell phone, got no response. We would have loved to have had the mayor here. He chose not to. Thank you, Steve, for being here.
Yeah, thanks, John.
And the mayor would have been welcome. We would have loved to have him. If he shows up now, we'll put him on the program.
All right, terrific.
Why do you think he didn't show up?
I think because what is becoming apparent to the voters when we've been together is, you know, I talk about substance, and Greg is mostly just about talking points, and that when you see us side by side, and when I've challenged him on questions, we've done 3 debates together, and I challenge him on questions, he doesn't have any answers.
What would you like to ask him right now if he were sitting to your right?
I'd like to ask him what he stands for. I'd like to ask him if he's going to be with Bernie Sanders next week when Bernie Sanders comes, because I think he is, and he's dodged that question. You know, is he going to raise taxes on Arizonans? Is he going to give a government takeover of health care? Does he stand for any kind of a physical barrier? And if you go back and look at...
Talking about the border now.
Exactly, on the border. Does he stand for any kind of a physical barrier? He obfuscates on that. So I think there are more question marks about Greg Stanton than there are answers. And it's a vast difference between he and I. I talk to people about what I believe in. You know, I'm coming here from a military background. I'm a problem solver. It's what I've done all my life. And when I talk to folks, I'm happy to work with anybody, Republican, Democrat, Independent, to get things done. And Greg is a professional politician. He just has about 4 scripts, and that's what he's going to talk about.
Let's get into your background a little bit for people who don't know you, because we have been getting a spate of ads from Greg Stanton. We haven't seen a lot from you. He's outspent you by about $700,000, I think, so far in the race. You graduated from UCLA. You served your country. Tell me how.
Yeah, so I joined, and also I graduated from Brophy, too, by the way.
Oh, you're a local kid.
I'm a local kid, born at St. Joe's. Yeah, so I joined the Navy when the first Gulf War broke out in 1991. I was already on my way to medical school.
Why Navy?
You know, it's interesting because I wanted to do stuff that would give me opportunities that I never have before. In Navy medicine, we take care of the Marines, so I figured that was kind of like the Army. And then we have more planes than the Air Force. We have surface ships and subs. So I said, if I'm in Navy medicine, I kind of get the best of all worlds, and I get to live by the ocean.
And you finished with the rank of, you were a chief medical officer, but you finished with the rank of captain.
That's right, which is like, for those, it's like a colonel.
You served from 91 to 2016.
That's right.
What did you do after that?
So I retired from the Navy on a Friday, and I was working at the Phoenix VA the following Monday.
You worked at the
back
VA.
here. Yeah,
that is in your district.
It is
District
in the
9.
And I tell you, I was the chief medical officer of the Navy when the whole meltdown happened in 2014, and in which they're separate systems, to be clear, the military medicine and VA medicine. And it broke my heart that was my hometown.
Why do you think the VA here in Phoenix, again, it got 1 star.
Yeah.
There's been all this discussion. This was ground zero.
It was.
For the crisis in the VA system.
That's right.
There's been no improvement.
No, and again, that's something I'd love to contrast with my opponent. He was the mayor throughout the whole time. He was mayor of Phoenix when that happened. He hasn't talked about it. He hasn't lifted a finger to help a Phoenix veteran.
Can that reflect as well, though, poorly on you, since you worked there?
Well, I came to work there. So what I did is I've been working there as a physician. I'm an interventional radiologist. It's a very specialized kind of physician that does minimally invasive image-guided surgery. They hadn't had that before. So I knew when I came back to Phoenix to work at the VA, the way I could help veterans the most effectively and the most quickly was as their doctor. I could have worked anywhere in the country. I chose to work there because now I set up a cancer clinic that they had never had. I take care of complex peripheral arterial disease. I still work there. People with aortic aneurysms, life and limb-threatening vascular problems, I'm the guy that
So
takes
the
care of
Veterans
those.
Committee would be something you'd want to serve on if you're elected to the U.S. House?
Absolutely, because I know how to fix it. That's the other reason I wanted to work there, was to understand. I think, you know, one of the things you learn in the military is you walk the spaces, as we say on a ship. If you really want to know what's wrong, you got to go to where the people are, go to where the work is being done, and that's how you learn it, and that's part of the reason I did it.
Before we move on, since you were there, what do you identify as the systemic problem in the VA, why it's so hard to fix this behemoth bureaucracy?
Right. Well, as you probably know, John, it is the biggest government department out besides the DOD. Over 300,000 employees. There's very poor accountability.
It's unwieldy.
It is unwieldy. It's layers of bureaucracy. But two main buckets that I would take on immediately are the HR, the ability to hire and fire people. That's still, this administration has done a good job in trying to make progress towards that, and I really commend them for it. But again, you need to dig down in the weeds and get those people, the bad apples, and root them out. And then the other thing is procurement and contracting. There are a lot of really good people that work in the VA system, and they are trying to push that boulder up the hill, and we need to help them so they can help veterans and do that mission.
Let's talk about CD9. Let's run a graphic of it, and I'll try to describe the district. It basically runs from north central Phoenix between I-17 and State Route 51 down to cover portions of Tempe, Mesa, Chandler, the Ahwatukee foothills in South Phoenix. It includes Arizona State University. It is a +4, according to the Cook Political Report, Democrat. You did not seek President Trump's endorsement. You didn't seek it. You didn't ask for it. You wouldn't want it at this point, right?
Well, you know, what I'm doing is we have different styles. And so, you know, what I'm doing is I'm running my campaign as a guy that wants to work with everybody to get stuff done. And
I keep hearing that this cycle. I'm not sure I know what that means.
Well, again, and I think that...
Isn't there a time when everybody's got to kind of pick a side?
Sure. And don't get me wrong. I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm a Reagan Republican, common sense Republican. And so what I'm really looking to do is to win this seat, to get to Congress, and to help make things better for folks in CD9. The president has done great things for the military. You know, I lived under sequestration. 2011 on, I was in Navy leadership, and that was a really tough period. We have folks in harm's way that were under-resourced, undermanned. And so those kind of things are great. Again, decreasing regulation, decreasing taxes, all really good policies. Absolutely.
Tell me in CD9, the only representative CD9 has ever known is Kyrsten Sinema, who's running for the U.S. Senate when the district was created after the 2010 census. To you, when you go out, what are the issues driving voters in this cycle? Is it Donald Trump?
I think there is a component of that, but what I want to talk about, because are the actual issues that are going to move things. Healthcare. I think healthcare is our most important domestic issue. It's almost a fifth of our economy.
Yeah, that's what Democrats are saying in this cycle.
Right. And the irony is they don't know. Again, if you talk to Greg Stanton, if he were willing to be on the show, he doesn't have a plan. He has no idea. You can't get him on any specifics. I have a detailed plan. I will protect people with pre-existing conditions. I also work at Maricopa County Hospital, the largest safety net hospital in the state. I still work there. We have to take care of people with pre-existing conditions. That's a moral imperative. I also have a plan to strengthen Medicaid, and I have a plan to improve and make the insurance markets more robust.
What does this race come down to for you?
I think it comes down to candidates. Candidates matter, and the bottom line is I'm the candidate that has dedicated my entire life to service, to my country, in harm's way, and being a problem solver. And I think what people want are people that are people in Washington, D.C. that are doers. Not people that are talkers, but people that get stuff done. Not folks just looking to get a promotion or to figure out what next best public office suits them. I'm doing this out of a sheer sense of duty, serving in combat and bringing healthcare ideas to America.
Let me ask you one more thing, and this came up, and I want to give you an opportunity to respond to it. This discussion with Arizona State University College Republicans back on September 4th.
Sure.
I know you've directed people to see the whole context of your comments, but basically you were talking about people receiving government benefits are no longer self-reliant. An individual on welfare becomes an economic captive.
Right, and so what
did you mean by that?
So what we were talking about was that particular, it was a person that was a paid staffer by Greg Stanton, and he talked about that on tape, on Bram Resnick's show. He was talking about a permanent universal welfare program, not any current welfare program. We were talking about a hypothetical thing. I have never said anyone on a public assistance program compared them to pets or anything that the media is saying. I have never done that. Yeah. In fact, my family has relied on those programs. So no way would I ever do that. It was a complete misrepresentation. Greg got the tape, he edited it, gave it to the Phoenix New Times, and they have completely distorted it. I believe that when we have a system that person was proposing that keeps people reliant and with no opportunity for upward mobility, that is dehumanizing. And so what we talk about doing is having programs that absolutely protect people that rely on the safety net. I want to strengthen the safety net so that it is there for people. That's why I work at Maricopa County Hospital.
There's a little bit of Trumpian in there, though, because he's talked about we shouldn't measure these programs by how many people are on them, but how many people are off them.
That's right. Well, you know, 75 million people in America rely on Medicaid. Almost 1 in 4 Americans rely on Medicaid or CHIP. And so I think that's something that what we want to do is keep a good economy growing so that people can have jobs and can be self-sufficient. And because that's earned success is what I believe, and I think what your audience believes is what people crave.
Final thing, you think this race is still within reach for you?
Oh, absolutely.
You believe that?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you keep hearing that, you know.
Well, we absolutely are. I think this is a neck-and-neck race, and you know, and candidates matter. And I believe on November 6th, you're going to see that people chose the candidate that they know actually has solutions, that is there for the right reasons, and that's a problem
Steve
solver.
Ferrara, thank you. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes,
Ferrara?
you did.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, and we
Thanks,
wish
John.
Greg Stanton had come on the program. We tried, we tried. When we come back, we're going to talk about Arizona Proposition 126 to prohibit new or increased taxes on services. It would change the Arizona Constitution. Is it a good or bad idea? Back in a moment on Newsmaker Saturday. Thank you, Steve. Welcome back to Newsmaker Saturday. We are going to talk about Proposition 126 on your November ballot to prohibit new or increased taxes on services. That's the initiative. A yes vote supports a constitutional amendment to prohibit the state and local governments from enacting new taxes or increasing tax rates on services performed in the state. A no vote opposes the constitutional amendment and thus retains the power of the state and local governments to enact taxes on services in the future. Wes Gullet is on the left of your screen. He is yes on 126. No on 126 is David Lujan. Thanks to you both for being here. David, I'll start with you. Best argument for beating down and saying no to 126?
Because it establishes a tax code which picks winners and losers and puts it into our state constitution. It gives certain industries special protections from being taxed at the expense of others. And it's going to slash millions from our public education system, public safety, and roads. It's a bad idea for Arizona.
Wes, who benefits and why should people vote yes?
People should vote yes because if they think that they're paying enough taxes, then vote yes. Because what we're trying to do is stop the politicians from increasing the number of things and the items that are taxed. Right now, we don't pay a service tax, but the politicians all want to have a service tax. When we started this campaign, they all came out of the woodwork to say, oh, this is a bad idea because we want to tax all these services. And there's services like health care and child care and air conditioning.
Pet care, pet grooming.
Right. All of those things are services. And people already pay a tax on those, John. So by voting yes, you can protect yourself from those taxes.
These are some of the services we're talking about. So you're saying that these folks are already paying it out of their individual taxes.
When they work, they earn money, they pay an income tax.
So you're saying it's a double tax.
Right.
If
it's double taxation, absolutely. Plus, cosmetologists pay a license fee, contractors pay a license fee. Those fees are already there. So really, it's a triple tax.
Why is it the realtors are so involved in this, David? The realtors are the real driving force behind this.
Yeah, it's an out-of-state special interest group, the realtors, that put $5 million into Arizona to try and push this. But, you know, you saw those cute puppies there. There is absolutely no danger that politicians are going to be able to tax veterinary services or child care. So in 1992, the Arizona voters passed a constitutional amendment in our state that says that if you want to raise taxes through the legislature, you need a 2/3 vote. Our state legislature has not raised taxes since that time.
They're hamstrung, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you need
They've
two-thirds
shifted
of the House and the Senate, and you need the governor to sign it. Do you think you can get two-thirds of the legislature to raise taxes on puppies? Probably not. And so we already have protections.
Well, then is this a sneaky backdoor way to get a tax on people and services?
No, what it's going to do is it's going to tie the hands of the legislature. I was a state legislator in 2009 when we were going through the worst economic recession in our state's history. We had a $1 billion hole to get out of. And I remember Governor Brewer back then saying, to get out of this $1 billion hole, we need to have all options on the table. What this does is it takes options off the table the next time we have an economic downturn. And so what happened back in 2009 when we didn't have all options on the table? We had to cut public education, we had to cut universities.
Okay, Wes.
And what we're doing is taking the worst option, a very bad option, off of the table. Taxing services is crazy. We're talking, they will say, David's going to say in a minute, that 65% of the economy is services. And so we've got to tax those people. Well, that's the reason that is because healthcare is the fastest growing service industry. And taxing healthcare, taxing everything, taxing healthcare is a crazy idea. So and John, when you say two-thirds, it only takes a simple majority, 16 votes in the House, or in the Senate and 31 in the House, to shift taxes. And what they'd like to do, some of the politicians would like to do, is they'd like to shift taxes to small businesses and the consumers that pay those taxes.
One of the crazy things about this, this tells you how confusing some of this is for voters. Can anybody name me one thing that David Garcia and Governor Ducey agree on? If we put up a graphic of these two, they disagree fundamentally on almost everything. And on this issue, they both agree, and they're a no on 126.
The politicians
Let's
are
put
no.
them up if we've got the picture of the governor and David Garcia.
The politicians are no on.
What in the world would drive both of these guys to be against this?
Because they want taxes. They want more money for
Ducey
government.
always says he doesn't want taxes.
Except that he does. He wants to shift the tax burden.
You calling the governor a liar?
No, I'm not calling him a liar. I'm saying with all due respect, he's wrong. He did make a mistake, and it's not permanent.
Have you told him?
Yeah. It's not a permanent tax.
How did he
It can
respond?
be changed by a vote of the people.
David.
It's not just politicians that are against this. It is firefighters, it's teachers, it's the faith community, it's business groups.
It's the Koch brothers.
Koch brothers, Children's Action Alliance.
Right, because
What
they want to
gives there?
shift. They want to shift the tax burden to the little guy. That's what they want to shift the tax burden from the big guy to the little guy.
Are there
and
any
that's why
industries
they
that
want
are
to
for
do
this
that.
other than the ones that are going to get the special protections?
Absolutely. Hairdressers, veterinarians.
The ones that are going to get the special protections.
And the politicians that you guys have rounded up make for nice television talk, but in theory, that's fine. But in practice, it's the real people who are delivering the services.
Okay.
The hairdressers.
If you're not a hairdresser or a realtor or you groom dogs, why is this a good idea?
Because
would these costs be passed on to all of us?
the costs of running government right now, Governor Ducey was able to raise teacher pay by 20% without raising taxes. So government is growing. The amount of revenue that is coming in
right
is
now
growing
it is.
because the economy is good. What we want to do is ensure that the economy stays good and not introduce a huge new tax that could stall the economy.
David.
I'll tell you something that's not growing, and that is our sales tax base, the things that we're able to tax with the sales tax. And that is because we're seeing so much purchases going through the online goods now. So an example, 5 years ago, if you were to buy Microsoft Office for your home computer, you go to Best Buy or an electronics store, you get a CD of the software, and you pay sales tax on that. It's moving towards, you would download it from the cloud. That's going to be, many people think it's going to be a service. So if the state of Arizona, for example, wanted to tax that in the future, if it's considered a service, it's going to be off the table.
Is it as simple to say, if you're against taxes, you vote yes? If you want more taxes, you vote no?
That's exactly what it is.
Is it that simple?
That's exactly what it is.
Governor Ducey and Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers, no, this is a bipartisan effort against Proposition 126.
We got to take a quick break here on Newsmaker Saturday. It's getting better. I haven't said Sunday for a while, maybe a week. You got to keep an eye on me, Jess. All right, we're back on Newsmaker Saturday, debating Prop 126 on increased taxes on services initiative. Back in a minute. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, we're talking about Proposition 126 that would prohibit new or increased taxes on services. Let's put up the language of the proposition if we can. And I want our guests here. We've got David Lujan, who's against 126, and a yes vote on this is favored by Wes Gullet on the left of your screen. Okay, this is the descriptive title. It's a constitutional amendment. That's the first thing out of the box. Tinkering with the Constitution, Wes Gullet, is that a little bit going too far on basically a carve-out for taxes?
Our Constitution has been amended 154 times. It is a living document. Every one of those amendments was done by the people. The people get to choose whether they want to amend the Constitution. That's what our Constitution...
Should you do it for a tax issue?
Oh, absolutely. And tax issues are done at the ballot all the time. The emergency sales tax increase that David talked about before was done as a constitutional amendment. These things happen all the time. What we're saying is we need constitutional protection to keep the politicians from growing that tax base into services. They've already started. There are a few services that are already taxed. Like, for example, photography is taxed. It's the service of photography. We want to stop them from growing this into other services.
If you've got to support government and programs, it's got to come from somewhere. If it doesn't come from services, where would it come from next?
Public education, public safety, roads. That's what's going to happen if you tie legislators' hands and they can't raise the revenue. The only thing they can do at that point is cut.
Is that a scare tactic or is it real?
It is a scare tactic. It's because this doesn't have any impact on current revenue. And it doesn't have any impact. No, it doesn't. And it doesn't have any impact on the growth of that revenue. So as the economy gets bigger, we raise more money for revenues for the state. And that's how you get more money. You grow the economy.
What about in a downturn?
In a downturn, you have to tighten your belt a little bit.
So just like everybody does at home.
Yeah, exactly. But government and the politicians just want to grow and increase taxes all the time.
Wes.
What if in the next economic downturn we didn't want to cut public education and roads and those things? So that's when you want to look at, are there possibilities? Could we do a temporary tax on certain services? Not daycare or veterinary cares, but what you're doing is you're tying the hands of the legislators to deal with it in those situations.
How can two reasonable guys see this so differently?
Well, and to David's point, you can do exactly what they did in the last downturn. You have a constitutional amendment that changes the Constitution and increases the taxes.
So I have a little experience.
That's what Governor Brewer did.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And they can still do it after 126
I have a little experience recently with Invest in Ed to say it's very difficult to get things on the ballot. And so if you know, to put tax policy into the Constitution is bad. It just makes it so difficult to overturn.
Okay, we got a minute left. Closing arguments, counselors. We started with David. We'll start with... No,
yeah,
you get the closing argument. David, you go. You got 30 seconds. What's the best argument against 126?
Well, we are coming out of one of the worst, and we still are in the midst of one of the worst education funding crisis in our state's history. Schools today have $840 million less in annual funding than they had a decade ago. The nonpartisan Grand Canyon Institute just came out with a report that if Prop 126 passes, it's going to immediately cut $250 million a year from the classroom site fund. And that's because you may recall the legislature is going to extend Prop 301. It goes into effect in 2021. There are some service taxes wrapped into that. Those service taxes will not be able to be continued.
Okay, Wes, why yes vote? Yes vote on
everything he just said was incorrect. Actually,
all right,
he
let's
doesn't
wrap
have
it
time
up.
to respond.
and it won't impact. 126 will not impact education funding or the extension of Prop 301. Those are grandfathered in 126, and it says so specifically in the Act. The reason to vote yes on this is because we don't need more taxes on services. It's double taxation. Vote yes on 126 to protect yourself.
You got it in. Wes Gullet, David Lujan, thank you very much. I hope you guys sorted that out. I'm still working on it. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.